Naranath ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Shri Gaura Hari ki jai, Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naranchaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shlokir Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Shunvata Swagata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Ridyanta Stohi Abhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. Hare Krishna. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 24, chanting the song sung by Lord Shiva, text 45 and 46. 45. So we will chant 45 together. Snigdha pravadgana shamam sarva saundharya sangraham charvayata chaturbahu sujata ruchirananam snigdha pravidgana shamam sarva saundharya sangraham charvayata ayata chaturbahu sujata ruchirananam snigdha pravidgana shamam sarva saundharya sangraham charvayata chaturbahu sujata ruchirananam snigdha pravidgana shamam sarva saundharya sangraham charvayata chaturbahu sujita ruchirananam snigdha pravidgana shamam sarva saundharya sangraham charvayata chaturbahu sujata suchirananam. Text 46. Padma kosha palakshamam sundara bruhu sunakshikam sudvijam sukha palosyam samakarna vibhushanam. Word for word. Snigdha, glistening. Pravrit, raining season. Ganashamam, densely cloudly. Sarva, all. Saundharya, beauty. Sangraham, collection. Charu, beautiful. Ayata, bodily feature. Chaturbahu, unto the four-armed. Sujata, ultimately beautiful. Ruchira, very pleasing. Ananam, face. Padmakosha, the whorl of the lotus flower. Palasa, petals. Aksham, eyes. Sundara, beautiful. Pruhu, eyebrows. Sunasikam, raised nose. Sudvijam, beautiful teeth. Sukapola, beautiful forehead. Ashyam, face. Samakarna, equally beautiful eyes. Vibhushanam, fully decorated. Translation: the Lord's beauty resembles a dark cloud during the rainy season. As the rainfall glistens, his bodily features also glisten. Indeed, he is the sum total of all beauty. The Lord has 4 arms and an exquisitely beautiful face with eyes like lotus petals, a beautiful, highly raised nose, a mind-attracting smile, a beautiful forehead, and equally beautiful and fully decorated ears. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. After the scorching heat of the summer season, it is very pleasing to see dark clouds in the sky. As confirmed in Brahma Samhita, Varhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam. The Lord wears a peacock feather in his hair, and his bodily complexion is just like a blackish cloud. The word Sundara or Snigdha means very pleasing. Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya. Krishna's beauty is so pleasing that not even millions upon millions of cupids can compare to it. The Lord's form as Vishnu is decorated in all opulence. Therefore, Lord Shiva is trying to see that most opulent form of Narayan or Vishnu. Generally, the worship of the Lord begins with the worship of Narayan or Vishnu, whereas the worship of Lord Krishna and Radha is most confidential. Lord Narayan is worshipable by the Pancharatrika Vidhi, or regulative principles, whereas Lord Krishna is worshipable by the Bhagavata Vidhi. No one can worship the Lord in the Bhagavata Vidhi without going through the regulations of the Pancharatrika Vidhi. Although neophyte devotees worship the Lord according to the Pancharatrika Vidhi, or the regulative principles enjoined in the Narada Pancharatra, Radha Krishna cannot be approached by the neophyte devotees. Therefore, temple worship according to regulative principles is offered to Lakshmi Narayan. Although there may be a Radha Krishna Vigraha or form, the worship of the neophyte devotees is acceptable as Lakshmi Narayan worship. Worship according to the Pancharatrika Vidhi is called Vidhi Marg, and worship according to the Bhagavata Vidhi principles is called Raga Marg. The principles of Raga Marg are especially meant for devotees who are elevated to the Vrindavan platform. The inhabitants of Vrindavan, the gopis, Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, the cowherd boys and cows, and everyone else are actually on the Raga Marg or Bhagavata Marg platform. They participate in 5 basic rasas: Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya, and Shanta. But although these 5 rasas are found in the Bhagavata Marg, the Bhagavata Marg is especially meant for Vatsalya and Madhurya, or paternal and conjugal relationships. Yet there is the Vipralambha Sakya, the higher fraternal worship of the Lord, especially enjoyed by the cowherd boys. Although there is friendship between Krishna and the cowherd boys, this friendship is different from the Aishwarya friendship between Krishna and Arjuna. When Arjuna saw the Vishvarupa, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, he was afraid for having treated Krishna as an ordinary friend. Therefore, he begged Krishna's pardon. However, the cowherd boys, who are friends of Krishna in Vrindavan, sometimes ride on the shoulders of Krishna. They treat Krishna equally. just as they treat one another, and they are never afraid of him, nor do they ever beg his pardon. Thus the Raga Marg or Bhagavata Marg friendship exists on a higher platform with Krishna, namely the platform of Vipralamba friendship. Paternal friendship, paternal service, and conjugal service are visible in the Vrindavan Raga Marg relationships. Without serving Krishna according to the Vidhi Marg regulative principles of the Pancharatrika Vidhi, unscrupulous persons want to jump immediately to the Raga Marg principles. Such persons are called Sahajya. There are also demons who enjoy depicting Krishna and his pastimes with the gopis, taking advantage of Krishna by their licentious character. These demons who print books and write lyrics on the Ragamarg principles are surely on the way to hell. Unfortunately, they lead others down with them. Devotees in Krishna consciousness should be very careful to avoid such demons. One should strictly follow the Vidhi Marga regulative principles in the worship of Lakshmi Narayan, although the Lord is present in the temple as Radha Krishna. Radha Krishna includes Lakshmi Narayan. Therefore, when one worships the Lord according to the regulative principles, the Lord accepts the service in the role of Lakshmi Narayan. In the Nectar of Devotion, full instructions are given about the Vidhi Marga worship of Radha Krishna or Lakshmi Narayan. Although there are 64 kinds of offenses one can commit in Vidhi Marga worship, in Raga Marga worship there is no consideration of such offenses because the devotees on that platform are very much elevated and there is no question of offense. But if we do not follow the regulative principles on the Vidhi Marga platform and keep our eyes trained to spot offenses, we will not make progress. In his description of Krishna's beauty, Lord Shiva uses the words Charvayata Chaturbahu Sujata Ruchirananam, indicating the beautiful four-armed form of Narayan or Vishnu. Those who worship Lord Krishna describe him as Sujata Ruchirananam. In the Vishnu Tattva, there are hundreds and thousands and millions of forms of the Supreme Lord, but of all these forms, the form of Krishna is the most beautiful. Thus, for those who worship Krishna, the word Sujata Ruchirananam is used. The four arms of Vishnu have different purposes. The hands holding a lotus flower and conchal are meant for the devotees, whereas the other two hands holding a disc and mace or club are meant for the demons. Although all of the Lord's arms are auspicious, whether they are holding conchals and flowers or clubs and discs, the demons killed by Lord Vishnu's chakra, disc, and club are elevated to the spiritual world, just like the devotees who are protected by the hands holding the lotus flower and conchal. However, the demons who are elevated to the spiritual world are situated in the impersonal Brahman effulgence, whereas the devotees are allowed to enter into the Vaikuntha planets. Those who are devotees of Lord Krishna are immediately elevated to the Goloka Vrindavan planet. The Lord's beauty is compared to rainfall, because when the rain falls in the rainy season, it becomes more and more pleasing to the people. After the scorching heat of the summer season, the people enjoy the rainy season very much. Indeed, they even come out of their doors in the villages and enjoy the rainfall directly. Thus the Lord's bodily features are compared to the clouds of the rainy season. The devotees enjoy the Lord's beauty because it is a collection of all kinds of beauties. Therefore, the word Sarva Saundarya Sangraham is used. No one can say that the beauty of the Lord is wanting in beautiful parts. It is completely Purnam. Everything is complete. God's creation, God's beauty, and God's bodily features. All these are so complete that all one's desires can become fully satisfied when one sees the beauty of the Lord. The word Sarva Saundarya indicates that there are different types of beauties in the material and spiritual worlds, and that the Lord contains all of them. Both materialists and spiritualists can enjoy the beauty of the Lord. Because the Supreme Lord attracts everyone, including demons and devotees, materialists and spiritualists, he is called Krishna. Similarly, his devotees also attract everyone. As mentioned in the Sad Goswami Stotra, Dhira Adhira Jana Priyo. The Goswamis are equally dear to the Dhira devotees and the Adhira demons. Lord Krishna was not very pleasing to the demons when he was present in Vrindavan, but the 6 Goswamis were pleasing to the demons when they were present in Vrindavan. That is the beauty of the Lord's dealings with his devotees. Sometimes the Lord gives more credit to his devotees than he takes for himself. For instance, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Lord Krishna fought simply by giving directions. Yet it was Arjuna who took the credit for fighting. Nimitta matram bhava savyasachin. You, O Savyasachi Arjuna, can be but an instrument in the fight. Bhagavad Gita 11:33. Everything was arranged by the Lord, but the credit of victory was given to Arjuna. Similarly, in the Krishna consciousness movement, everything is happening according to the predictions of Lord Chaitanya, but the credit goes to Lord Chaitanya's sincere servants. Thus the Lord is described herein as Sarva Saundarya Sangraham. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimani Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Panchakapatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhaya cha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. The Lord's beauty resembles a dark cloud during the rainy season. As the rainfall glistens, his bodily features also glisten. Indeed, he is the sum total of all beauty. The Lord has 4 arms and an exquisitely beautiful face with eyes like lotus petals, a beautiful, highly raised nose, a mind-attracting smile, a beautiful forehead, and equally beautiful and fully decorated ears. Hare Krishna. Thank you for the opportunity of service this morning. I humbly ask the blessings of all the Vaishnavas that I may share something that is in alliance in according to Prabhupada's teachings and also very pleasing and inspiring to our hearts and ears. So, what the translation was and where the purport went. Quite interesting. The translation is a beautiful description of the 4-armed form of Lord Vishnu. And we see in the previous verse, Lord Shiva is saying that he wishes to see the Lord exactly in the form that the devotees worship. So this description of the Lord is very, very pleasing and beautiful because it is exactly that form that we will worship. And the previous verse says that even though the Lord has many different forms, but Lord Shiva wishes to see the form that is especially liked by the devotees, and the form particularly that will perfectly satisfy all the demands of the senses. So the verse is describing the Lord's beauty to a very dark rain cloud. And Prabhupada speaks in the purport about how after the scorching summer heat, it's very pleasing when you see dark clouds in the sky, when you hear the rumble of thunder, when you feel that change in the air, Summer is coming, so we'll be familiar with that, very scorching heat during the day, and suddenly at night, the weather changes and it's, suddenly there's rainfall. This change is very pleasing to the senses, and the Lord's beauty is exactly like this pleasing form. And we understand then that when we come before the form of the Lord, we should feel this pleasure when we see his form. It also reminds me of the Guruvastakam, the first verse, the translation that, the mercy or the presence of the spiritual master is like he pours water on the forest fire to extinguish the cycle of birth and death, samsara. So it's very pleasing in that way. And also I was thinking not just pleasing, but when you get that relief after a very hot day, or that when you see the clouds, you feel a lot of relief when the atmosphere changes. Krishna's beauty and Krishna's presence in our life should be that. That relief should settle in our hearts when we come before the Lord and we see his beauty. And Prabhupada describes how Krishna's beauty is all-encompassing, and he uses the Brahma Samhita as an example, that Krishna's beauty is the sum total of everything. And when we come before him and when we experience his beauty for ourselves, there is nothing lacking in Krishna at all. That is why he is so pleasing and he brings such relief. Prabhupada is talking, or Lord Shiva is actually glorifying in particular Lord Vishnu in these verses. He's describing the four-armed form of the Lord, and Srila Prabhupada is speaking of the worship of Lakshmi Narayan for us as the neophyte devotees, that we cannot directly just begin worshipping Radha and Krishna. That is the most confidential form of worship. But also Prabhupada is speaking about how whether, you're a demon or a devotee, whether you're touched by the conch shell of the Lord or the Sudarshan chakra, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Shri Gaura Hari ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Whether you are touched by the lotus flower or the Sudarshan chakra, it doesn't matter, because it is all auspicious, whatever it is that you get from the Lord. And in this way, there is no comparison to Krishna's beauty at all. And indeed, Krishna's beauty is not something superficial, like what we are used to in this world. The verse concludes by saying that, the Lord has a beautiful, highly raised nose, a beautiful forehead, and beautiful ears. Now, I don't know, when you're describing someone, I don't think you say, that girl, she had a really nice forehead, when you're describing someone. Krishna's the beauty described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and there are many descriptions of the Lord's beauty. I mean, when we were reading the pastime of Dhruva Maharaj, there's a description. And in the following coming cantos, there are many descriptions of what the Lord looks like, and each one is very different and very, very unique. I don't think, like I said, we've ever heard of someone's forehead, someone's navel, someone's ears, someone's hair as being beautiful. And you just compare that to Kali Yuga and what the current definition of beauty is and what people do to look beautiful, right? It's actually very dangerous. It's very harmful, right? We're reading about Krishna's very beautiful, highly raised nose. Highly raised nose, it's very pointy. And in the modern age, what do people do? There's something called rhinoplasty. They file away the raising of the nose. They want it completely flat, right? All of these dangerous things, you can file away the roundness of your jaws so it's completely straight and angular. Botox injections, just inject yourself with chemicals, plastic implants, cosmetic implants, or like makeup that's tested on animals, right? Is it even, and then we go and we put that on our face, and every day, the comparison of beauty is so interesting. But Krishna's beauty is so transcendental. It is so natural, right? There's nothing superficial about him. And then Prabhupada, after describing Krishna's beauty, he touches on the paths of worship for devotees. He talks about, the Vidhi Marg and the Raga Marg. Ooh, hot topic. Raga Marg, something we know of, but we don't speak of. No, we stay away from that, right? But yes, it is a path of worship, and there are two distinct paths of worship. And ultimately, we practice as per our qualification. Prabhupada has prescribed the path of Vidhi for us, the rules and regulations in devotional service, right? And yes, I'm sure those of us who are familiar with the philosophy, we hear all of these terms, Vaidhi Bhakti, Sadhana Bhakti, Raganuga Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, Ragatmika Bhakti, all of these phrases that we like, these terms we throw around, and we're not quite sure what they are. They sound a little too elevated, so I'll just leave that alone. One day I'll get to it, But what they are actually are different facets and stages of devotional service, basically. Different phases in practitioners' lives as they elevate through their practice and mature in their spiritual understanding and progress. Devotees are meant to elevate to all of these levels. Because ultimately, what is devotional service at the end of the day? Right? Externally, what is devotional service? It is engagement in service that is pleasing to Krishna. Krishna is the center of our lives, and everything is done as an offering to him. Right? That is the very simplest, most easiest understanding of devotional service. And what all of these terms are how practitioners engage in devotional service. Externally, devotional service is one thing, but it's approached very differently internally according to the qualification of the practitioner. In the 11th canto, when Krishna is speaking to Uddhava, the Uddhava Gita, he speaks about how one should act in devotional service according to one's qualification, right? Because it doesn't matter in the broader spectrum, whatever stage of devotional service you're on. You can be a neophyte practitioner, sincere in your endeavor, following the rules and regulations. You can be an intimate servant of the Lord, serving, above the rules and regulations. But devotional service, however it's done, is potent in all of its forms. So it's not just because, I'm not on that very highly elevated stage of practice that there's something wrong with me, or I'm lesser than. No matter what, if I am sincerely engaged in my service and I am dedicated heart, mind, and soul to my spiritual practice in bhakti, that is potent. Krishna will always see the sincerity and the intention with what we do. Krishna is called Bhavagrahi Janardana. That means always he sees the intention behind what it is we're doing. But yes, Srila Prabhupada has cautioned us, and we see in this purport, he says, sometimes there are practitioners who want to jump over the rules and regulations of devotional service, dive into that intimate practice of bhakti without proper understanding, without maturity, without training. Yes. So yes, Srila Prabhupada was very cautious in what he presented to us, because you know what? Prabhupada knew us better than we know ourselves, right? In fact, he did say to a disciple that if I told you all of the rules and regulations, you would faint, right? And, sometimes we do have this understanding, maybe we're practicing for some years and we feel like, Krishna consciousness, what Prabhupada has given us, no, it's the basics, it's the foundation. Maybe there's something else, somewhere else. No, Prabhupada has given us everything, but he's presented it in a way that is very protective of our spiritual life, right? I mean, if you think about it, Prabhupada speaks about the Vrindavan relationships, how we should elevate ourselves through our practice of rules and regulations to enter into those pastimes. It's not that Prabhupada never spoke about these intimate things at all. I was just thinking, we sing Jaya Radha Madhava. What is Jaya Radha Madhava? It's a description of what happens in Vrindavan, right? If you think about Tulsi Puja and the translation of Tulsi Puja, the song, what are we praying for? We're asking Tulsi Devi to bless us to be maidservants of Krishna, right? It's not that Prabhupada hasn't presented these things, but he's presented it in a very systematic way for us, to protect us in that way. Because we are all affected by the modes of material nature. There isn't anyone who can say that they are not affected by or at least myself, I will not speak for other people. I'm still affected by the modes of material nature, and I have to go through the rules and regulations of bhakti to purify myself of this. Our faith in Krishna will thicken when we go through the process. Prabhupada speaks of boiling the milk, right? Yes, we expand and we expand and we expand and we preach, but at some point we must go deeper into our own practice. When you boil the milk, what happens for those of you who make mangal sweets for the Lord? You boil the milk, it becomes thicker and thicker and thicker. You add the sugar, then it changes from milk to kheer, from kheer to barfi, So many things. As you thicken and go deeper and deeper and deeper, as you evaporate the water content, right? So similarly, our practice of the rules and regulations are meant to evaporate our past karma, the anarthas, everything holding us back. It's meant to purify us and elevate us, because as our faith awakens through this process, our devotional service will blossom in this way. And when we follow the rules and regulations, it allows space for us to develop faith in the scripture, to develop faith in the association and community of devotees. And that will slowly bring us to a space of internally feeling like, yes, there is no place that I would rather be other than the association of devotees. And when I begin to feel that way, then something more intimate can develop from that. So it begins with the practice of regulative principles under the guidance of a spiritual master, because we need someone to teach us, right? How to consciously practice spiritual life in this way. Prabhupada speaks in the purport, we have to be trained how to train our eyes to avoid offenses. And we know this, how hard it is. You're just going about your day and, you see something and some thought pops into your head, oh, why don't they do it like this? Why are they doing it like that? Or you criticize, oh, it's better if it's like this. All these things just pop. We have to train our eyes to avoid offenses in this ways, right? To be attentive to the practice of Krishna consciousness. Because at the moment, Ragamag is one definition of the Ragamag platform is spontaneous devotional service, right? It just spontaneously arises. And again, I speak for myself. The only spontaneous thing that arises in me is how to not chant. Like, how can I put this off? How can I do other things? Because I'm not really feeling it right now. Yes, I took a vow and I'll do it because I have to do it. But do I spontaneously want to do those things? When you walk past and someone says, Prabhu, can you help me wash the pots? Do I spontaneously say yes, or spontaneously, actually, you know what, Prabhu, I'm so sorry. I've got a phone call, All of these tiny little things spontaneously want to just not do devotional service and to sense gratify at that moment. So we actually have to train ourselves in how to be spontaneous correctly, right? This is why Prabhupada was so careful with what he presented to us, because he knew the nature of what he was dealing with, right? Because we are so susceptible to our mind and our senses. But it's not that someone who only follows the path of Vaidhi Bhakti will never be elevated. It's not that elevation only comes from spontaneous devotional service. No. Sincere practice of the rules and regulations, like I said, Krishna sees that sincerity. Why will he not appreciate that? Right? Krishna will recognize the struggle we have gone through for him. And when we practice also, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that the practice of the rules and regulations in devotional service, yes, they elevate us, but what they're also meant to do is, there are 5 obstacles to steadiness in devotional service that the rules and regulations are meant to help us overcome. Ironically, the first one is falling asleep while chanting. That is an obstacle to devotional service. The second one is being distracted while doing your bhajan. Oh, sorry, not distracted. Yeah. Distracted while doing your bhajan means, you're doing your devotional service, but you're not here. You're just robotically doing it, because you do it every day. So I'm sure like Ravindra, he plays the harmonium every day. He doesn't even have to think about what he's playing, sometimes. That kind of just distractedness, not doing our bhajan and our spiritual practice with full presence and concentration, The third one is being indifferent, again, when we're performing devotional service. Indifferent. It's just, I'm doing it because I have to do it. It's my duty, so I guess I'll do it. Not because I find joy and benefit from engaging in my devotional service. The fourth obstacle is we are overcome by our senses. We know this all of the time. Mind goes there, we're gone with it, right? Drags us here, there, everywhere. We're gone along with it. And the fifth one, yes, our innate bad qualities, our anartas that are present, whether we know them or unconsciously that they are still there and they're coming up and we're being purified of them. So the practice of Vaidhi Bhakti, of rules and regulations, if done correctly, is meant to overcome these. And once we overcome this and we are then steady in our practice, we can then enter into something more deeper, more intimate, more spontaneous. Prabhupada speaks in the purport about the two processes that we follow in Krishna consciousness, the Pancharatrika Vidhi. Pancharatrika Vidhi is referring to specifically the rules and regulations in deity worship that we follow. We worship the Lord in a very strictly regulated way. And it's not just in the temple. This is meant to be done by householders as well. You have deities in the home or you have a little altar, and there's a standard of worship that you do. Why? Because it regulates your life. Then at least at home, you have spiritual regulation. Your life revolves around the deity. And the Lord is kinder in the home as well because He adjusts to your schedule. But in the temple, it's different. Everyone lives according to the Lord's schedule, right? So, and then Prabhupada speaks about the Bhagavatam marg, which is he's in the purport, Prabhupada calls it the more spontaneous. But that would be then the two train tracks, Prabhupada would call them, the Bhagavatam marg and the Pancharatrika marg. They are the two train tracks on which Krishna consciousness is spread in the world. And what ISKCON ultimately is then, is we can say institution or organization, but it is a place, ultimately, or it should be, where any soul in any position of life, whoever they are, they can come into ISKCON, and through the practice of what is presented here, they can come to the highest level of existence. That is what ISKCON ultimately is. It is an institution that teaches one, an educational institution, I feel, that trains us in elevation, spiritual elevation, that no matter where you are, whatever path of life you come from, whatever experience you have, it doesn't matter. That simply, sincerely following the rules and regulations of devotional service will elevate you in such a way that you come to the highest platform of existence. But that is hard because the majority of us are still struggling on the material conception of life, even after practicing for many, many years. We still have a, if I can say, perverted view of reality that is based on our senses and our mind. We cannot see things for what they actually are in relation to Krishna. We see things through our experience. And that is why ultimately we need rules and regulations. Because, I will be honest, if I had a choice, I wouldn't wake up early. I wouldn't do things spontaneously. I need to be pushed. I need to be forced, in inverted commas, to do things sometimes. Because Krishna consciousness is not the most ecstatic thing in my life at the moment, right? That is why I need rules and regulations. Until I come to a space where, yes, spontaneously, I want to do this because I feel the benefit and I'm truly inclined. So Srila Prabhupada didn't want to prematurely introduce us to these things, hence his emphasis on Vaidhi Bhakti for us. Because Ragamarg is a very specific kind of hankering for Krishna. It's a very specific thing. And he knew that the majority of us, that's not where we are. That's not where our practice is. And also, we come from the lineage of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master. And what was the focus of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati? Mass-scale preaching of Krishna consciousness. That was his focus, because we are followers of Lord Chaitanya. As Prabhupada concludes the purport with that, what does he say? Let's see. In the Krishna consciousness movement, everything is happening according to the predictions of Lord Chaitanya. And what is Lord Chaitanya's prediction? That in every town and village, the holy name will be chanted. So that is a mass scale movement. It's not going to be done simply by sitting in one place and performing bhajan, right? We're a little different from our Gaudiya brothers and sisters in that way. Our focus, or the focus of our mission, is a preaching mission. It is expansion, right? It's a mass scale. But when you have a mass scale movement, things change, right? Previously, in different ages, if you wanted to grow in spiritual life, you went to Vrindavan, you left home, you trekked all of that way, and you surrendered yourself to a particular guru. And the guru would then train you individually, because the gurus, they didn't have many disciples in those days. Individually, the guru could focus on you with a lot of attention and care and just ensure that you grew in your spiritual qualities in those ways. But in the modern age, it's different. Krishna consciousness, you don't have to leave your home at all. You can become a devotee just like that from exposure, And also, in Kali Yuga, we do not have, or we are not born with good samskars. When we begin our spiritual life, it's from a very different platform to, generations before us. We have to train ourselves in just how to be human. We're not even on that platform. We have to train how to even talk to each other, how to serve a spiritual master. Previously, when you took shelter of a guru, you already knew those things, right? You already knew the rules and regulations of a spiritual life. So the focus could be something different. Now we don't even know that. So the basics are very, very different because it's different time, place, and circumstance. So Srila Prabhupada knew that for the vast majority, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta as well, that for the vast majority, Vaidhi Bhakti is enough. It's enough of okay. It's enough for the majority of us. Yes, we spread the movement far and wide, but Srila Prabhupada, again, as I said earlier, he did emphasize on the expansion of Lord Chaitanya's movement, but he also did touch on boiling the milk, on going a little more deeper, because what happens when you add too much water to milk? At some point, you're only left with water. If you keep adding water. So, but yes, these are just some comments to close. That yes, we are a preaching mission. We are followers of Srila Prabhupada. We are here to expand the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But also, I feel we should think about preaching to what end, right? Because when we look at Lord Chaitanya, and if we read the Chaitanya Charitamrita and the conversations he had with the Goswamis, what did he speak about? He didn't only speak about the rules and regulations and then it stopped at that, right? What did he go? Naham Vipro, Nachanarapati, Nabi Vaishyo, na Sudra. I'm not a Brahmana, a Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra. Gopi Batur Padakamalaya. I'm a servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis of Vrindavan. Right? Ultimately, the rules and regulations, yes, we follow them, they purify us, they elevate us. But, if we focus so much on expansion and growth, you'll reach a point and then you'll kind of sometimes feel, then what more? We forget about the devotees who are here after the expansion and the growth and their spiritual lives and what happens from them, And this is why also it's important. Yes, we are trained in the rules and regulations under the guidance of a spiritual master. But we should not, Prabhupada says this, you do not accept a guru based on social or societal or ecclesiastical considerations. We come to the Krishna consciousness movement and we have this tendency when there are people who are here, who are you aspiring for? You know, what do you've been here for a while, you should take initiation now. Yes, it is important to formalize our connection to the parampara. But don't just choose a spiritual master, because everyone in the congregation is initiated by this particular guru, or, it looks like a lot of the people in management are disciples of such and such guru. If I take initiation, it'll be better, Or sometimes we have this tendency to project the things we want in spiritual life onto a guru. I want A, B, and C from my spiritual life. It seems like this particular spiritual master is inclined to those things, so you know what, I'll just surrender. This is why, is it Srila Rupa Goswami, or in the Nectar of Devotion, it's recommended, when you are considering taking shelter of a guru, you observe the spiritual master first. You have to see what the spiritual master says, how they behave, what their own spiritual inclination is, because it could be different from your own. And then what happens? You take initiation without thinking about it, and then suddenly years down the line, you're stuck in a relationship and you're not where you want to be spiritually. Because your inclination is different, your spiritual master's inclination may be slightly different in terms of how they approach spiritual life, right? In the past, a spiritual master had ample time to train a disciple individually because they didn't have many disciples, right? But now, again, when you have a mass scale movement, what happens? Hundreds and thousands of people take initiation from one guru. The guru doesn't have time to individually train each and every disciple. And that is why ISKCON is a Shiksha movement. We emphasize, yes, Diksha is very important, but we emphasize Shiksha as well, taking instructions from mature spiritual individuals. Because in smaller groups, it is easier to cultivate spiritual life together, informal, smaller groups, led by qualified individuals, so that in those smaller groups, you can focus on your quality of spiritual life as well. Because that's what happens. It's a byproduct of when things expand. People fall through the cracks. Things fall through the cracks. Training falls through the cracks. I'll never forget, when my mom and I used to do service in the gift shop, right? So people are coming up for initiation, and then, they're coming to buy their neck beads, their japa beads, their tilak, these things. And I'll never forget, this was many years ago. This Mataji, her initiation is like, I don't know, in a few days, so she's coming to buy tilak. She says, I'm getting initiated, I'm coming to buy some tilak. And then she asks us how to use tilak. So things like this, right? When we expand, there's a compromise in quality. That is why we need guidance and shiksha and smaller groups to ensure that these things are taken care of, that the devotees who have joined have the quality of spiritual life that they should have, ultimately, right? It's very interesting. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has written a series of articles on, the demons in Vrindavan and how they represent different anarthas and obstacles in spiritual life. So in the article he's written on Putana, the killing of Putana, he speaks about how organized religion indicates the end of the genuine flow of a spiritual movement. That when we try to organize things, that's the end of the flow in one way. But we need an institution for training and education. Because as I said, we're not on that platform where we have good qualities. We have to start right at the bottom. And that is why we have the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. That is there for Vaidhi Bhakti, for the rules. And yes, for Raga Marga Bhakti as well. Because you can look at Srila Prabhupada and you can't say that he wasn't a pure devotee. And it's not like he taught us one thing and did something else internally. Whatever Prabhupada gave us in his books, whatever the rules and regulations he asked us to follow, he did that himself. And through that process, he elevated himself to the position, the highly eminent position that he is in, right? Sometimes, again, we have this idea that ISKCON is only an entry level of spiritual life, and if you want deeper spiritual things, you have to go somewhere else. No. Prabhupada's own example shows that. He's given us everything we need to elevate ourselves. Prabhupada was not a neophyte person. There is one morning walk where a disciple asks Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, what about your internal life, your internal practice? And Prabhupada got very upset. And he chastised the disciple and he said, that you do not require. Meaning, you don't need to know at this point what my internal practice is, right? Because Raganuga Bhakti, spontaneous loving devotion, cannot be mass-produced. It is a thing of qualification and quality, right? That is an internal process that is between you, your spiritual master, and the Lord, ultimately. But again, we need the community for the devotees that are here to ensure that they have the quality of life that they need, right? Yes, it is something very, very rarely attained. But think about it, from the outside, you wouldn't be able to tell what platform a spiritual practitioner is on, because externally it looks the same. I chant 16 rounds, or I chant japa, the spontaneous intimate service chants japa. I do devotional service, they do devotional service. But the difference is the intention of our practice. But us, the practitioners that we are, we need regulation to control the worldliness that we engage in. Because ultimately, when we talk about intention, it's a question of, I am supposed to do this versus I want to do this at the end of the day. And this should come from the disciple. You know, it's very easy to give someone a vow, to say, follow the rules and regulations, chant 16 rounds, take this vow, and it's very easy for me to hold someone accountable and make them feel guilty for the vows that they take and whether they're struggling or not with them. But who will teach me the positives of spiritual life? You know, I need a space in spiritual life for, we're talking a simple example about japa, where am I willing to chant because I have taken a vow and I'm supposed to do it and I'm accountable for this, and if I don't do it, I'm a bad disciple and a bad devotee, versus I wanted to chant because I understand what it is to chant with taste, and I really enjoy this time with Krishna. That is the difference in our practice and our intention, you know? So I will just conclude with that. And just one more point on intention. You know, we need the rules and regulations, of course, because we don't know how to depend on Krishna. So if you want to know how far you are in your spiritual life, ask yourself how much you actually depend on Krishna. And that will tell you maybe what you need to do, what you need to focus on, and what you need for your own spiritual cultivation. I will stop there. I apologize, I went a bit over time. Any quick corrections, additions, chastisements? Everyone is hungry. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.